What does a $500 dinner taste like? For Arthur Vance, a tech billionaire, it tasted like freedom. He was at Aurelia, New York's most exclusive restaurant, toasting champagne with his mistress, Serafina. He'd told his pregnant wife he was in a late-night board meeting. But in a city of 8 million people, the one person who shouldn't have been there was. Across the dining room, in a quiet booth, his wife Eleanor, 8 months pregnant, just watched him. The explosion was coming. It wasn't a matter of if, but when. The light inside Aurelia was the color of old money, a deep, warm amber that made everyone look like a masterpiece. It was a room designed to flatter egos, and tonight Arthur Vance's ego was soaring. He was 42, but the relentless pace of New York finance and tech had carved him from granite. His suit was a custom Tom Ford, dark as a shadow, and his watch, a Patek Philippe 50F&11, was a quiet statement of power. Arthur Vance wasn't just rich, he was influential. He was the CEO of Vance Tech Solutions, a man who moved markets with a single memo. And tonight, he was a man in love. Or at least, he was in the throes of a powerful infatuation that felt the same. Across the table, Serafina Dubois smiled, and the entire room seemed to dim in comparison. She was 28, the head curator at a rising Chelsea gallery. Where Arthur was stone, she was fire. Her red dress was audacious, her laughter uninhibited. She wasn't just beautiful, she was sharp. She challenged him, debated his market predictions, and quoted Rilke in the same breath. She was everything he thought he'd been missing. "You're staring, Arthur," she murmured, lifting her glass of Dom Perignon. The diamond bracelet on her wrist, a welcome gift from him last month, caught the light. "I'm admiring," he corrected, his voice a low rumble. Us. It feels right, doesn't it?" Serafina's gaze was calculating, yet soft. "It feels inevitable." "But Arthur," she leaned in, the scent of her perfume, Baccarat Rouge 540, cutting through the aroma of truffle and aged beef. "I hate this. The sneaking around, the lies you have to tell." Arthur waved his hand dismissively, a gesture that cleared billion-dollar accounts. "It's temporary, Sarah, I told you. Things with Eleanor, they're complicated." "Complicated," she repeated, the word souring. She's pregnant," he finished, his tone clipped. "Yes, and the timing is unfortunate. But that doesn't change how I feel about you. That doesn't change the fact that Eleanor and we've been roommates for years. The pregnancy was, well, it was a last-ditch effort. One last attempt to see if there was anything left." He was lying. The pregnancy hadn't been an effort, it had been a celebration of Vance Tech hitting the Fortune 500, a celebration of them. But that felt like a lifetime ago. "And was there?" Sarah asked, her dark eyes pinning him. Arthur looked away, signaling the sommelier. "We're celebrating us tonight, Serafina. Let's not talk about home. Let's talk about the Venice Biennale. Let's talk about the condo in Tribeca." He had bought a $10 million investment property 3 weeks ago. It was for her. It was their nest. Serafina smiled, accepting the change of subject. She knew she was winning. He had told her he and Eleanor were separated, living in different wings of their vast Park Avenue penthouse, and that the divorce was already in motion, just waiting for a delicate time after the baby was born. She believed him. Why wouldn't she? He was Arthur Vance. He didn't just break rules, he rewrote them. "To us, then," she said, clinking her glass against his. The restaurant was a hushed symphony of clinking silver and whispered conversations. They were in the main dining room. Visible, a power couple in the making. Arthur liked the visibility. It was part of the thrill. He was a man who took what he wanted, and he wanted the world to see him with Serafina. He felt his phone vibrate in his pocket. A text. He ignored it. It was probably Eleanor, checking in. "The lie I told tonight," he said, taking Sarah's hand, "was that I was in a late-night emergency board meeting." "Oh." She traced the veins on his hand with a painted nail. "And what's the emergency?" "You," he said, and kissed her fingers. "You're the emergency. The beautiful, wonderful emergency I never saw coming." He felt the phone vibrate again. Buzz, buzz. Buzz, buzz. Insistent. Annoyed, he pulled it out. It was his wife. Text from Eleanor. "Just checking in. Hope the meeting is going well. Love you." He sighed. The guilt was a dull, annoying ache, like a bad knee. He typed back, "Going long. Don't wait up. Love you too." He put the phone down, face down on the table. He looked back at Serafina, the perfect smile returning to his face. Now, where were we? Across the restaurant, hidden in the shadows of a deep alcove, Eleanor Vance watched him put the phone down. She watched him smile at the woman in the red dress. She had seen him read her text. She had just read his reply, and the glass of water in her hand began to tremble. Eleanor Vance had not wanted to come to Aurelia. At 8 months pregnant, everything was a struggle. Her ankles were swollen, her back was a constant fire, and her baby, a boy, they knew it was a boy, was currently using her ribs as a kickboxing bag. She was tired. She was always tired. But her younger sister Chloe had been insistent. "No, Elle, absolutely not," Chloe had said, barging into the penthouse that afternoon. "You are not sitting in this apartment again just because Arthur has another emergency meeting. He's been in meetings every night for a month. You look pale. You're going out. I'm taking you out." "Chloe, I don't fit into anything," Eleanor had protested, gesturing to her swollen body, draped in a grey cashmere lounge set. "Nonsense. You fit into that black maternity wrap dress. The one from, what's that obscenely expensive place? Hatch. You look like a goddess in it." "We are going to Aurelia. I pulled a string. I called in that favor from my old boss. We are going to eat $400 worth of non-alcoholic cocktails and perfectly cooked vegetables." The reservation had been for her and Arthur. A baby moon dinner. The last romantic night out before their world was consumed by diapers and 3 a.m. feedings. Arthur had cancelled it that morning, citing the unavoidable Vance-Tech board crisis. Eleanor hadn't had the heart to cancel the reservation. So, she'd let Chloe drag her there. Their booth was perfect. Tucked away in a corner, it was dark, private, and offered a panoramic view of the dining room. It was the celebrity booth, the one reserved for people who wanted to see, but not be seen. "See? Isn't this better?" Chloe said, her face bright. Chloe was the opposite of Eleanor. Where Eleanor was quiet, measured elegance, Chloe was vibrant, chaotic, and fiercely loyal. "It is," Eleanor admitted, sipping a complex mocktail of blood orange and spiced ginger. "It's nice, thank you, Chloe." "Okay, so, how are you?" Chloe asked, her tone shifting, becoming serious. "And I don't mean, how's the baby? I mean, how are you? With him?" Eleanor hesitated. How was she? She was worried. Arthur was distant. He was working harder than ever, true, but this felt different. He was detached, his eyes glancing at his phone every few seconds, a new password on his laptop. When he did touch her, it felt programmatic, a perfunctory hand on her belly. "He's just stressed," Eleanor said, the word sounding hollow even to her. "The new launch. The board. It's a lot. He's a billionaire, Elle. A lot is his default setting. This is different. He missed your last OB/GYN appointment. He had a call with Tokyo. He always has a call with Tokyo, Chloe snapped, then lowered her voice. I'm sorry. I don't like how he's treating you. You're carrying his son. You're the one who was with him when Vanstech was just 3 guys in a garage. You coded half the original platform. You're not just some wife, Eleanor. You're his partner. I know, Eleanor said quietly. It'll be better after the baby comes. It has to be. It was then, in that lull of conversation, that she saw him. He wasn't at the door. He was walking through the center of the restaurant, following the maître d', Jean-Pierre. Arthur, looking impossibly handsome, smiling, his hand resting on the small of a woman's back. A woman in a startlingly beautiful red dress. A woman who was not her. Eleanor's breath caught in her throat. It felt like a physical blow. The air punched out of her lungs. Elle, what's wrong? You're white as a sheet. Chloe turned, following her sister's gaze. Oh my God. Eleanor couldn't hear her. She was watching, as if through a long tunnel. She watched Jean-Pierre, the maître d', who had known her and Arthur for a decade, seat them at a prime table. A table in the center. A be-seen table. She watched Arthur pull out the chair for the woman. She watched the woman laugh, a bright, musical sound that carried across the room. Eleanor, we're leaving. Right now, Chloe said, her voice a low, furious hiss. She was already grabbing her purse. No. The word was so quiet, Chloe barely heard it. What? Elle, don't do this to yourself. We are leaving. No, Eleanor said again, her voice firmer. Her eyes were locked on the couple. Get your phone. What? To call him? To curse him out? No, to record. Eleanor, that's insane. He's my husband, Chloe. This is my life. He's sitting 50 feet away with her, while his pregnant wife is in the same room. I want to see. I need to see what this is. Her heart was hammering, a frantic bird against her ribs. The baby gave a hard, painful kick, as if sensing her distress. She flinched, placing a hand on her stomach. She watched Arthur order. He was gesturing to the wine list, talking to the sommelier. He ordered the 2010 Chateau Margaux. Their wine. The wine they'd had on their honeymoon. A single hot tear escaped and rolled down her cheek. She didn't wipe it away. Okay, Chloe said, her voice breaking with a rage Eleanor couldn't yet feel. Okay, we'll stay. But the second this is too much, we're gone. Eleanor just nodded, her gaze fixed. She watched as her husband, the father of her unborn child, lifted a glass of champagne to toast the woman who was destroying her world. It was at that precise moment that Eleanor, on a cruel, masochistic impulse, decided to text him. Just checking in. Hope the meeting's going well. Love you. She watched in real time as his phone vibrated on the table. She watched him pick it up. She watched his brow furrow for just a second, and then she watched him type. A moment later, her own phone illuminated. Going long. Don't wait up. Love you too. The lie was so blatant, so cold, so effortless, it shattered something deep inside her. The trembling in her hand wasn't sadness anymore. It was an earthquake. The next 30 minutes were a special kind of torture, a slow-motion dissection of her marriage. Eleanor didn't eat. The exquisite 90-a-plate diver scallops sat untouched, growing cold. Chloe didn't eat either. She just vibrated with a silent, protective fury, her phone resting on her lap, occasionally and discreetly lifting it to capture a moment. Eleanor watched. She had built a career on code, on seeing patterns in chaos. She was seeing the pattern now. She watched the way Arthur leaned in, not just to hear Serafina, but to inhale her. She saw the familiar crinkle by his eyes, the one he used to save for her when she said something clever. He was using it for this woman. She watched Serafina. The woman was bold. She touched his arm. She laughed, throwing her head back. She was a performance, and Arthur was her rapt audience. "Who is she?" Eleanor whispered, the question tasting like ash. "I don't know," Chloe said, her thumbs flying across her phone screen under the table. "But I'm finding out. Dark hair, red dress, at Aurelia with Arthur Vance. The gossip columns live for this." "Don't," Eleanor said, a flash of her old self, the private, dignified woman, surfacing. "Don't send it to anyone. This is evidence, not entertainment." The word evidence hung in the air. It was a legal term, a divorce term. The stress was becoming physical. A sharp, gripping pain radiated from her lower back and wrapped around her belly. A Braxton Hicks contraction. She'd been having them for weeks, but this one was different. This one had teeth. She gasped, clutching her stomach. "Elle, are you okay? Is it the baby?" Chloe's panic was immediate. It's just a contraction," Eleanor breathed, focusing on the linen tablecloth. "It'll pass. It's just the stress." "That's it. We're leaving." Chloe threw her napkin on the table. "No, I'm not running away. I'm not going to be chased out of a restaurant by my husband's mistress." The word was bitter, ugly. Eleanor took a deep breath, riding the wave of the contraction until it subsided. The pain in her abdomen was replaced by a cold, clarifying anger. "I'm going to the restroom," she said, her voice steady. "Elle, no, don't walk by them, please. The restroom is on the way to the exit. And it just so happens," Eleanor said, pushing herself up from the booth, a slow, difficult, pregnant movement, "that I have to walk right past their table. What are you going to do?" "I don't know," Eleanor said honestly, but she did know one thing. "He's not going to sit there, drinking my wine, lying to my face, and not know I saw." She stood, one hand on her belly, the other on the back of the booth, steadying herself. She was the picture of late-stage pregnancy, beautiful, burdened, and profoundly female. She began to walk. It was the longest 50 feet of her life. The restaurant's plush carpet seemed to suck at her heels. Every eye felt like it was on her, though no one was looking. Her focus was singular. Table 12. Arthur had his back to her. Serafina was facing him, but her head was tilted down, looking at the menu. 10 feet. She could smell Serafina's perfume. It was sweet and overpowering. 5 feet. Arthur was laughing, a deep, genuine laugh that Eleanor hadn't heard in months. 2 feet. She was at the edge of their table. Serafina looked up, her eyes flicking from the menu to the large, pregnant woman standing over them. Her smile faded, replaced by polite confusion. "Can I help you?" Serafina asked, her tone implying Eleanor was a lost tourist. Arthur's laughter died in his throat. He sensed the shift in Serafina's gaze. He felt the shadow fall over the table. "Arthur," Eleanor said. His name was not a question. It was a verdict. Arthur Vance froze. The blood drained from his face, leaving a sickly, grey pallor under his expensive tan. He didn't turn. He just stopped. It was the absolute stillness of a prey animal that knows the predator is right behind it. Slowly, as if the air had turned to cement, he turned his head. His eyes met hers. In that 1 second, Eleanor saw it all. Not just guilt. Not just shock. She saw annoyance. He was annoyed that his perfect, curated evening had been interrupted. That was the moment her heart truly broke. "Eleanor," he breathed, his voice a strangled whisper. Serafina's head snapped between them, her brow furrowed. "Arthur," Who is this?" Eleanor never broke eye contact with her husband. She didn't have to say a word. Her presence, her swollen belly, her cold, devastated eyes said everything. You're not supposed to be here," Arthur stammered, an absurd, idiotic thing to say. "Clearly," Eleanor replied, her voice shaking but clear. "You, on the other hand, are exactly where you're supposed to be, aren't you? At your emergency board meeting." "Oh my God," Serafina whispered, the pieces clicking into place. She looked at Eleanor's stomach, then at Arthur's terrified face. "Board meeting?" Eleanor held his gaze for one more agonizing second. She let him see the ruin he had caused. Then, with a dignity she didn't know she possessed, she turned and continued her slow, deliberate walk toward the restrooms, leaving a bomb of silence in her wake. Arthur was on his feet. "Eleanor! Wait! Wait!" He lunged after her, grabbing his suit jacket. "Arthur!" Serafina cried out, also standing. "Arthur, what is going on?" But he was already gone, pushing past a waiter, chasing his wife's shadow down the hall. Serafina was left alone at the table, the entire dining room now staring at her. The woman in the red dress, the center of the storm. Humiliated and furious, she grabbed her purse and ran after him. The confrontation was about to move from public humiliation to private warfare. The hallway to the restrooms at Aurelia was paneled in dark mahogany and lined with antique mirrors, designed to make the space feel infinite. It was here, in this corridor of endless reflections, that the facade of Arthur Vance's life came crashing down. Eleanor didn't make it to the ladies' room. Another contraction, sharper this time, seized her. She cried out, a sound of pure pain, and leaned against the wall, one hand splayed against the cool wood, the other cradling her belly. "Eleanor!" Arthur rounded the corner, his face a mask of panic. This was not a business deal he could control. This was chaos. "Don't!" she gasped, holding up a hand. "Don't! You touch me." "Elle, please, let me explain. It's not what it looks like." Eleanor let out a sound that was halfway between a laugh and a sob. "Not what it looks like? You're sitting there, drinking our wine with that child. Her name is Serafina, and she has nothing to do with this." "She has everything to do with this," Eleanor shot back, her voice rising. "You lied to me. You sat there and you lied to me." "Keep your voice down," he hissed, grabbing her arm. "People can hear." "Get your hands off of me," she shrieked, yanking her arm away. The movement sent a jolt of pain through her. "You care about that? You care about what they think? You just destroyed our family in front of a room full of strangers, and you're worried about your reputation. Arthur, what the hell is going on?" Serafina. She had followed them. She stood at the end of the hall, her arms crossed, her face a thundercloud of rage and confusion. Arthur was trapped, caught between his wife and his mistress, a grotesque tableau reflected in a dozen mirrors. "Sarah, please," he said, turning to her, his voice pleading. "Go back to the table. This is a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" Serafina stalked toward them. "She just called you her husband. She's pregnant." "You told me. You told me you were separated. You told me the divorce was almost final." Eleanor's head snapped toward Arthur. The blood drained from her face. "You... what? You told her... what?" Arthur's eyes darted between the two women. The lie was exposed, and it had wounded them both. "He told me you were living in separate wings," Serafina continued, her voice rising, high and sharp. "He told me the baby was... that it was complicated, from before you... separated. He told me you were done. The ultimate betrayal. It wasn't just an affair. It was a plan. He was replacing her." He lied," Eleanor said, looking at Serafina. a moment of strange, horrific solidarity passing between them. He lied to you too. Arthur? Seraphina's voice was now shaking. Is she lying? Sarah, it's complicated. Don't you dare say that word again, Seraphina screamed. You lied to me. You used me. You made me. Me, the other woman. Seraphina, darling, calm down. Don't darling me. She's right, Eleanor said, her voice dropping to a deadly calm. The pain in her belly was a constant, throbbing fire now. You need to stop talking, Arthur. You need to answer her. Did you lie to her? Arthur looked at his wife, at the mother of his child, her face pale with pain and betrayal. He looked at his mistress, vibrant and furious, her reputation in tatters. He, Arthur Vance, the master of the universe, had lost control. Yes, he finally admitted, the word torn from him. I lied. We're not separated. Not officially. Seraphina recoiled as if he had slapped her. You're still with her. You've been... God, I feel sick. Elle, please, Arthur said, turning back to his wife, sensing she was the greater, more immediate threat. Let's go home. We can talk about this. We can fix this. Fix this? Eleanor's laugh was brittle. You think you can fix this? Like you fix a bad quarter? You just move the numbers around, fire a few VPs, and it's all better? That's not what I meant. I know exactly what you meant, she said, pushing herself off the wall. You're a plumber, Arthur. You just fix leaks. But this isn't a leak. This is a flood, and we're all drowning. It was at that moment that Chloe, having paid the bill with a slam of her credit card, burst into the hallway. I knew it, she yelled, seeing the scene. She saw Seraphina, she saw Arthur, and she saw her sister, ashen-faced and clutching her stomach. You bastard! Look at her! Look what you've done! Chloe, stay out of this, Arthur commanded. I will not. That is my sister. Chloe, it hurts! Eleanor whimpered, her anger suddenly collapsing. She slumped against the wall. The pain! It's not stopping. What? What pain? Arthur's panic returned. The baby, Chloe said, rushing to her sister's side. She's been having contractions for 20 minutes, you selfish pig. She's in labor. No, it's too early, Arthur stammered. It's not due for 6 weeks. Tell that to the baby, Chloe screamed. Someone, call 911. My sister is in labor. Her voice echoed out into the restaurant. The hushed symphony stopped. A glass smashed. Diners were on their feet, peering into the hallway. And then, the worst part. The small, red recording lights. In a restaurant full of the rich and powerful, everyone had a smartphone. And they were all pointed directly at the billionaire, his pregnant wife, and his crying mistress. The scene was being captured from a dozen angles. Oh God, Arthur whispered, seeing the phones. He wasn't looking at his wife. He was looking at his life, his company, his stock price, imploding in real time. Arthur, Seraphina whispered, utterly broken. Everyone is watching. Elle, Arthur said, finally moving. Elle, we have to go. Let me help you. He reached for Eleanor. Don't touch me, she screamed, a raw, primal sound. She looked at him, her eyes filled with a hatred so pure it stunned him. You stay away from me. You stay away from my baby. The words hit him harder than any fist. The maître d', Jean-Pierre, was there, his face ashen. Sir, madam, the ambulance is on its way. Please let us help you to the lounge. Just get him away from me, Eleanor sobbed, clinging to Chloe. Arthur stood alone in the hall of mirrors, his hands raised in a useless gesture of surrender. He was reflected 1,000 times, a cheater, a liar, a fool, He had wanted the world to see him tonight, and now it did. The ride to Lenox Hill Hospital was a blur of sirens and fluorescent lights. Eleanor was strapped to a gurney, her breaths coming in short, pained gasps. Chloe sat beside her, holding her hand, murmuring reassurances. Arthur had tried to get in the ambulance. "I'm her husband," he'd insisted to the paramedic. Chloe had fixed the man with a look of pure ice. "He's the reason she's in this state. You let him in, and her stress levels will go through the roof. Do you want to be responsible for that?" The paramedic had looked from Chloe's furious face to Arthur's expensive, useless suit and made his decision. "Sir, I need you to follow in your own car. Family only." Arthur had been left on the curb, surrounded by a sea of flashing iPhones, as the ambulance wailed into the night. He arrived at the hospital 10 minutes later, his driver having broken every speed limit. He found the maternity ward, a place of soft pinks and blues that felt garish and offensive. He found Eleanor's room. Chloe was standing guard outside the door like a sentinel. "You can't go in," she said. "She is my wife, Chloe. I am the father of that child." "And you're the man who put them both at risk," she countered, her voice dangerously low. "The doctor is with her. They're trying to stop the labor. The last thing she needs is to see your face." Is the baby okay?" For the first time that night, the bravado was gone. He just looked small. "They don't know yet. They've given her a shot of terbutaline. They're trying to calm her uterus. Stress-induced preterm labor is what the doctor called it. Your stress." Arthur leaned his head against the wall, the antiseptic smell, the quiet beeping of monitors. It was a million miles from Aurelia. "Chloe, I messed up. I know that. I don't know what I was thinking." "No," Chloe said, shaking her head. "You knew exactly what you were thinking. You were thinking you were Arthur Vance, and the rules don't apply to you. You thought you could have your perfect wife, your perfect son, and your perfect hobby," she spat the word, "on the side. You just got sloppy. You got caught." Before he could answer, the doctor, a calm, grey-haired woman named Dr. Aris, came out of the room. "Mr. Vance?" she asked. "Yes." "How is she? How's the baby?" "The contractions are slowing," Dr. Aris said, her face unreadable. "The medication seems to be working. We've managed to stop active labor for now. But she's not out of the woods. She's dilated 2 centimeters. She must be on complete bed rest until she's full term." "Bed rest? At home?" Arthur asked, relief washing over him. "No, here, in the hospital. Any spike in blood pressure, any new stress. It could trigger labor again. And at 34 weeks, that's a risk we can't take. The baby's lungs aren't fully developed. He'd be in the NICU for weeks." The weight of it finally landed. Weeks. NICU. "I want to see her," he said. Dr. Aris looked at Chloe, who gave a tiny, imperceptible shake of her head. "Mr. Vance, your wife is stable, but she is extremely agitated. She's requested that only her sister be present." She can't do that. I'm her husband." "Right now, sir," Dr. Aris said, her voice firm. "I'm not her marriage counselor. I'm her doctor, and my patient's health and the health of her baby is my only priority. What she needs is 0 stress. Right now, you are her primary stressor. So no, you can't see her. Not until she asks for you." Dr. Aris nodded politely and walked away. Arthur was left in the hallway with his sister-in-law. "You heard the woman," Chloe said, her arms crossed. "Go." "I'm not leaving," he said, stubbornness returning. "I'll sleep in the waiting room. I'm staying." "Fine, suffer. I don't care. But you're not getting in that room." Chloe turned and slipped back inside, the door sighing shut behind her. Arthur sank onto a hard plastic chair in the waiting lounge. The adrenaline was gone, replaced by a cold, hollow dread. He pulled out his phone. It was 11:30 p.m. He had 47 missed calls, 12 from his head of PR, 10 from his company's general counsel, 5 from his mother, and 20 from Serafina. He also had over 100 text messages. He opened one from his PR head, David. Text. Arthur, call me. A video from Aurelia is on Twitter. It's got 500K views. The Gilded Noir and Page 6 have already picked it up. We are in catastrophic failure mode. Call me. He opened his web browser. The headline from The Gilded Noir was brutal. Live from Aurelia. Tech titan Arthur Vance caught with mystery woman. Pregnant wife Eleanor Vance rushed to hospital. The video was grainy, shot from across the room. But it was unmistakable. It showed Eleanor standing by the table. It showed Serafina's shocked face. It showed him, frozen. The audio was muffled, but you could hear a woman's voice, Chloe's, scream, "My sister is in labor." He closed his eyes. This was bad. This was a nightmare. He needed to fix it. He started to dial his PR head, but a new text message popped up from Serafina. Text. You animal. You utter, complete animal. You didn't just lie to me. You humiliated me. You used me as a prop in your sick game. You think I'm just some girl you can buy with a bracelet and a condo? You're wrong. You have no idea what you just started. He stared at the text. You have no idea what you just started. A chill ran down his spine that had nothing to do with the hospital's air conditioning. He'd been worried about his wife. He'd been worried about his company. He had forgotten about the woman he'd left standing alone in the middle of that restaurant. And a woman scorned, he realized, was a very different kind of problem. A problem that lawyers and PR couldn't always fix. Serafina Dubois did not go home. She went to the Tribeca condo Arthur had bought for her, their nest, and she began to dismantle her life. Or rather, his. She had stumbled out of Aurelia 10 minutes after the ambulance left, her face a mask of tears and running mascara, the jeers and stares of the other patrons following her out the door. The video of her, looking like a pathetic, jilted mistress, was already circulating before her Uber had even crossed 23rd Street. Her phone was a wildfire of notifications. Friends, family, gallery colleagues, art world rivals. Is that you? OMG, Sarah, what happened? I can't believe you'd do that to another woman. She was 28 years old, ambitious and smart. She had spent 5 years building a sterling reputation in the snobbish, backbiting New York art scene. Arthur Vance had just incinerated it in 2 hours. She wasn't just a mistress. He had made her a fool. He hadn't just lied about his wife. He had lied to her. He had told her Eleanor was cold, emotionally distant, that they were only together for the company until the baby was born. He swore the pregnancy was an accident that happened after they had already decided to split. The woman in that hallway, pale, terrified, and in pain, was not the cold fish Arthur had described. She was a victim. And that made Serafina an accomplice. No, Serafina said to the empty, $10 million living room. I am not the villain in his story. She sat on the white Italian sofa he'd had delivered last week. She had 2 choices. She could disappear, change her name, and move to London. Or she could fight. She could reclaim the narrative. She opened her laptop. Arthur wasn't just a charismatic liar. He was a meticulous one. He'd kept his Sarah life and his Eleanor life completely separate. But he had made one fatal mistake. He had put things in writing. A month ago, when Serafina had threatened to leave him, to stop being his dirty secret, he had sent her an email, An email from his private account, but an email nonetheless. It was a long, flowery, desperate plea. She found it in minutes, from avance.privateavymail.com to sarahdigmail.com. Subject: You are everything, Sarah, my love. Don't go. You are the only thing that's real in my life. I am trapped. Yes, the baby is coming. I will do my duty. I will be there for the birth. I will see my name on the birth certificate. But my life with Eleanor is a business arrangement. It has been for years. The second the Vance heir is secure and the stock is stable post-launch, I am done. I am leaving her. I promise you. The future is not her and the baby. The future is you and me. Don't let me go back to that prison. I love you. As she read it again, and this time the words business arrangement, Vance heir, and prison stood out like blood on snow. He had played her. He had played both of them. She opened a new email. She typed in an address she knew from her gallery work, an address that struck fear into the hearts of every C-suite executive in Manhattan. To tipsthegildedknee.com. Subject: The full story, Arthur Vance. She attached the email. She attached a selfie he had sent her from his private jet 2 weeks ago. She attached a receipt for the diamond bracelet, which he had foolishly sent to her apartment. Her fingers flew across the keyboard. To whom it may concern, the woman in the red dress has a name. It's Seraphina Dubois. And I was not with Arthur Vance. I was lied to by Arthur Vance. He told me he was separated. He told me his marriage was over. He fed me a string of calculated lies to get me into his bed and to make me believe in a future that was a complete fantasy. He preyed on me. But I am not his only victim. His wife is the biggest one. See attached. He calls his marriage a prison. He calls his unborn child the Vance heir and a business arrangement. He is not a titan. He is a monster, and everyone should know who he really is. She hit send. She felt a cold, terrible, liberating calm. It was done. Then she poured herself a very large glass of the $500 whiskey he kept stocked in her bar. She sat and she waited for the firestorm. It took exactly 15 minutes. At 1:05 a.m., the Gilded Mai published its second story of the night. Exclusive. The Aurelia Mistress speaks. He lied to us both. Leaked emails reveal Arthur Vance's brutal plan to leave wife after Vance heir is born. The article was explosive. It had the email. It had the receipts. It had her statement. Seraphina Dubois was no longer the villain. She was the whistleblower. And Arthur Vance was about to find out what catastrophic failure really meant. Arthur Vance did not sleep. He sat on the hard plastic chair, his Tom Ford suit rumpled, his tie ripped off and stuffed in his pocket. He'd spent the night in a frantic, losing battle on his phone. He had been on the line with his legal team, his PR team, and his board of directors, all at once. "Kill the story," he had raged at David, his PR head, at 1:10 a.m., just after the Gilded MY story dropped. "Kill it! Arthur, it's not a story, it's a nuclear bomb," David had yelled back. "She gave them emails. Vance heir. Business arrangement. The markets in Frankfurt and Tokyo are already reacting. Vance Tech is down 9% in pre-market trading. This isn't a sex scandal, Arthur. You just told the world your family is a business arrangement. It questions your ethics. It questions your stability. The board is invoking the morality clause. They're calling an emergency meeting for 9 a.m. to discuss your removal as CEO. They can't. They can, and they will. You have to make a statement. You have to. I don't know. Fix this with your wife." Arthur had hung up and stared at the door to Eleanor's room. Fix it. He had to fix it. He waited until 6:01 a.m., when the sky was a bruised purple. A nurse told him Chloe had gone home to shower and change. This was his chance. He walked to the door. He didn't knock. He just entered. The room was dark, save for the glow of the fetal heart monitor. Thump, 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 thump. The sound was fast, steady, alive. Eleanor was asleep, but it was a restless, troubled sleep. She looked pale, her face etched with strain even in unconsciousness. An IV was taped to the back of her hand. He moved to the bedside, his heart a cold knot in his chest. This was his wife, the woman he'd built an empire with, the woman he had loved, truly loved, before. Before what? Before he got bored. Before he got arrogant. He reached out a trembling hand and lightly touched her arm. Her eyes snapped open. The second she saw him, her face flooded with fear. Then a profound, cold anger. She yanked her arm away. "Get out!" she whispered, her voice raw. "Elle, please, just listen to me. I am so sorry. I don't know what to say." "Then don't say anything. Just get out." She tried to sit up, but the monitors and her own body betrayed her. She winced, falling back against the pillows. Don't move," he said, lunging forward. "You're not supposed to. The doctor said I'm not supposed to be under stress." She fired back, her voice gaining strength. "And you walking in here is the most stressful thing that could possibly happen. So get out. Eleanor, our lives are on fire. The company, the board, everything is falling apart. That Serafina, she leaked emails." Eleanor just stared at him. "Emails? What emails?" I said some things, stupid things. About you and the baby. About leaving." Eleanor's face, which he thought couldn't get any paler, went chalk white. You wrote it down?" "Elle, I was just telling her what she wanted to hear. It didn't mean anything. I love you. I love this baby." "Stop," she said. The word was flat, dead. "What?" "Stop lying. I've been lying here since 11 p.m., listening to our son's heartbeat, and I've been thinking about the last 6 months, the late meetings, the business trips, the new password on your phone, the way you stopped touching me unless it was for a photo. You haven't loved me for a very long time, Martha." "That's not true." "I do." "No," she said, and her voice was so final it chilled him to the bone. "You love the idea of me. You love the idea of the perfect family, the brilliant, stable wife, the Vance heir. It's all part of the brand. And that woman, she was your escape. But you didn't just lie to me, Arthur. You lied to her. You lied to everyone." She reached for her phone on the bedside table. Her hand was shaking. What are you doing?" he asked, a new panic rising. Are you calling a lawyer? Elle, we can't do that. A divorce right now. It would wipe out the company. You'd be destroying your own future." Eleanor looked at him, and for the first time she smiled. It was a terrifying, humorless expression. "My future? You think my future is tied to you?" She found the number she was looking for. "Who are you calling?" he demanded. "The Gilded NY," she said. His blood turned to ice. "What? No, Eleanor, no. Don't. Give me the phone." He lunged for it, but she was faster, pulling it away. "Get away from me!" she shrieked. A nurse burst into the room. "Mr. Vance, you need to leave. Now! Her blood pressure is spiking." She's calling the press," Arthur yelled, frantic. "Sir, I'm calling security," the nurse said, hitting a red button on the wall. Eleanor's finger hovered over the call button. She looked at her husband, this desperate, pathetic shell of a man. "You're right," she said quietly. "I'm not calling them." Arthur paused, breathing heavily. "I'm calling my lawyer," she continued, "and then I'm calling your head of PR, and I'm going to make a statement, but it's not going to be the one you want." "Eleanor, what are you going to do?" She met his gaze. The woman he knew, the soft, supportive, brilliant partner, was gone. In her place was a queen he had betrayed, who was now holding the executioner's axe. "You told the world I was a business arrangement," she said, her voice dripping with ice. "You told the world our child was just a vant as heir. You're about to find out what a bad business partner I can be. You're not the only one who built that company, Arthur. I wrote the original lines of code, and my name is on the founding charter." "What? What does that mean?" "It means you just started a war with the one person who knows all your secrets. Now get out of my room. You can read my statement with the rest of the world." 2 large security guards appeared at the door. "Mr. Vance, you need to come with us." Arthur looked at his wife, at the fetal monitor, at the guards. He had lost. He had lost everything. He turned and let them escort him from the room. Arthur was relegated to the hospital's cafe, a sterile room that smelled of burnt coffee and floor wax. He sat at a small table, his phone buzzing incessantly. The 9 a.m. board meeting was happening without him. He was officially locked out. At 9:15 a.m., his phone lit up with a Google alert for Vance Tech. It wasn't a press release from the company. It was an exclusive in Forbes. "Eleanor Vance, co-founder of Vance Tech, issues statement from hospital. I am focused on my son. My partnership with Mr. Vance is under review." His blood ran cold. Co-founder. Partnership. She hadn't used those words in years. He read the statement. It was a masterpiece of corporate and personal annihilation, drafted by a lawyer who clearly earned their astronomical fees. "I am, as has been reported, in the hospital under medical supervision, following a shock that induced preterm labor. My priority is, and will remain, the health and safety of my unborn son." She'd used son. She was claiming him. The events at Aurelia were as much a shock to me as they were to the world. The statements and emails allegedly written by my husband, Arthur Vance, are deeply disturbing. They do not reflect my values, nor do they reflect the values upon which we built Vance Tech Solutions. I am not a business arrangement. I am a co-founder and a 20% equity partner in this company, a fact that seems to have been forgotten. The Vance heir, as my child was so callously described, is not a bargaining chip. He is my son. While my medical situation requires me to be on bed rest, I am not incapacitated. I am in full communication with my legal team and my financial advisors. Effective immediately, I will be evaluating all options regarding my personal and professional partnership with Mr. Vance to ensure the protection of my child, my assets, and the future of the company I helped build from the ground up. Eleanor Harris Vance. Arthur dropped his phone on the table. 20%. It was true. In the beginning, she had taken equity in lieu of a salary. He'd always managed it for her, rolled it into their joint assets. He'd assumed she forgot. He'd assumed she was just his wife. But she wasn't. She was Eleanor Harris Vance. She had just drawn a line in the sand. She wasn't the wife of Vance Tech. She was the co-founder. This wasn't a divorce. It was a hostile takeover. The 9 a.m. board meeting, he realized, wasn't about firing him. It was about choosing a side. His phone rang. It was the board's chairman, Marcus Thorne. "Arthur," Marcus said, his voice void of all warmth. "Marcus, listen, I can explain." "Don't. We've read Mrs. Vance's statement. We've also seen the pre-market numbers. We're down 22%. The stockholders are in a panic." "It's a blip, Marcus. A personal matter." It was a personal matter, Arthur. until your mistress leaked emails that call your character into question, and your wife, who I'll remind you, holds the second largest individual stake in this company, just announced your partnership is under review. This is now a material crisis. So what's the call, Marcus? A leave of absence? A fine? There was a long pause. The board has voted, unanimously. You are suspended as CEO and chairman, effective immediately, pending a full internal investigation. We are releasing a statement that the board stands with our co-founder, Eleanor Vance, and her family. We're appointing an interim CEO. You're siding with her? Arthur was incredulous. She's stable, she's smart, and right now, she's the only one who looks like an adult. She just saved this company, Arthur, by cutting you out. The statement is already live. Arthur hung up the phone. He was numb. In 24 hours he had lost his mistress, his wife, his son, and his company. He was just a man in a rumpled suit, alone in a hospital cafe. 1 week later, Eleanor Vance was not in the hospital. She was, however, on mandated bed rest. But her bed was the command center of her Park Avenue penthouse. The apartment had been swept by her new security team. Arthur's belongings were in storage. The locks were changed. She was propped up on a mountain of pillows, a laptop on her knees, a fetal monitor strapped to her belly, and a phone permanently attached to her ear. Surrounding her were not nurses, but her legal team. "The bylaws are clear," she said, her voice strong. The morality clause was breached. His suspension holds. But suspension isn't enough. I want the vote of no confidence. "Eleanor," her lawyer, a shark named Harrison, said, "he still has 30% of the voting stock. We have your 20 and the board's 15. We're still short. We need to flip a major shareholder." "Then get me one," she said. The baby kicked. She smiled, rubbing her stomach. He was a fighter, just like his mother. The past week had been a blur. She had stabilized. The baby was healthy, and the doctors agreed to let her go home under 24/7 private medical care. Serafina Dubois had, astonishingly, sent flowers. Not to her, but to the hospital for the maternity ward. The card simply said, "From one victim to another. I'm sorry." Serafina had also, Eleanor's lawyers noted, retained a very aggressive attorney and was suing Arthur personally for fraud and emotional distress. She was going after his non-corporate assets. Arthur, meanwhile, was in exile. He was staying at his Hamptons estate, issuing apologies through his new, separate PR team. They were weak, pathetic. He'd tried to see her. He'd tried to call. She'd blocked him on all channels. The war was now being fought on 2 fronts. Serafina was attacking his personal wealth. Eleanor was attacking his power. A call came through on the secure line. "Mrs. Vance," said her lawyer, "we've got a bite, a potential ally. He's unconventional, but he wants to meet." "Who?" "Daniel Chen, CEO of Nova Core." Eleanor's eyes widened. Daniel Chen was Arthur's biggest rival, a Silicon Valley predator who had been trying to get a foothold in Vance Tech for years. He wants to help me?" "He sees an opportunity," Harrison said. "He wants to buy out a portion of Arthur's shares. He'll pay a premium. It would gut Arthur, leave him with nothing but cash, but it would give Chen 15% of the company. Combined with your 20, you would be the new center of power. You and Chen. The enemy of my enemy principle." "He wants to meet?" Eleanor asked. "I can't leave this bed. He knows. He's in his car. He'll be here in 20 minutes. "Let him come," Eleanor said. She closed her laptop. The game had changed. Arthur thought he was a king. But a king is nothing without his queen, and she had just picked up her own crown. When Arthur Vance finally managed to breach security, by serving her with legal papers via a process server. He found her. He found her in the living room, in her silk pajamas, looking radiant, flanked by her lawyer, and sitting across from her, drinking her coffee, was Daniel Chen, his mortal enemy. They were laughing. Arthur stood in the doorway, a piece of paper in his hand, a ghost at his own feast. Eleanor looked up. Her smile didn't falter. "Arthur, perfect timing," she said, her voice as smooth as velvet. "Mr. Chen and I were just discussing the future of Vance Tech. We've decided it needs a new vision, a new moral center." She placed a hand on her belly. "You called our son the Vance heir. You were right. He is, and I'm just making sure he has something to inherit." Arthur looked at his rival, at his wife, at the empire he'd built, crumbling around him. He hadn't just been caught. He had been checkmated. In the end, it wasn't the lie that destroyed Arthur Vance. It was who he lied to. He underestimated the two women he betrayed. He saw his mistress, Serafina, as a beautiful distraction, not a strategic fighter who would burn his reputation to the ground. And he saw his wife, Eleanor, as a quiet partner, not the co-founder who knew his business better than he knew himself. Arthur lost his company, his reputation, and his family, all for a $500 dinner. The story isn't just about cheating. It's about what happens when arrogance meets intelligence. Eleanor and Serafina, two women he tried to play against each other, became the twin forces that dismantled his entire world. What did you think of Eleanor's final move? Was it brilliant or as cold as his? Let me know in the comments. This story is a wild ride, and if you want more dramas like this, don't forget to like, share this video with someone who loves a good story, and please subscribe to the channel. We're just getting started. The gavel was inches from striking the wood, sealing a verdict that would destroy a woman's life. Marcus stood there, adjusting his $5,000 suit, smirking at his wife, Olivia. He had stripped her of her dignity, her home, and was moments away from taking their son. He leaned in and whispered that she was nothing, just a broke, pathetic woman he had saved from poverty. He thought he was the smartest man in the room. He was wrong. He didn't notice the sleek black Maybach pulling up outside, or the man walking through the courtroom doors, a man whose net worth made Marcus's company look like a lemonade stand. Marcus mocked his wife's last chance, not realizing he had just declared war on the daughter of the most dangerous CEO in New York. The air inside courtroom 304 of the Manhattan Civil Courthouse smelled of stale coffee and aggressive cologne. It was the scent of desperation mixed with the metallic tang of expensive lawyers billing by the minute. Marcus Vance sat at the plaintiff's table, looking the picture of corporate success. His charcoal Brioni suit was tailored to perfection, hugging his shoulders in a way that screamed power. He checked his Rolex Submariner, an exaggerated sigh escaping his lips, loud enough for the court reporter to glance up. He was bored. Destroying his wife was taking longer than he had anticipated, and he had a tea time at the Hudson National Golf Club at 2. On the other side of the aisle, Olivia Vance looked like a ghost. She wore a grey cardigan that had seen better days, her hands clasped tightly in her lap to stop them from trembling. She looked small, defeated, and exactly how Marcus wanted her to look. Unstable. "Your Honor," Marcus's lawyer, a shark named attorney Julian Thorne, boomed. Thorne was the kind of lawyer you hired when you didn't just want to win. You wanted to salt the earth so nothing could ever grow there again. "We have established that Mrs. Vance has no steady income, no permanent residence, and a history of what can only be described as emotional volatility. My client, Mr. Vance, is the CFO of Optima Tech. He can provide stability. He can provide a future." Judge Harrington, a stern man with thick spectacles, looked down at Olivia. "Mrs. Vance, do you have counsel present, or any counter-evidence to the financial affidavit submitted by your husband?" Olivia stood up slowly. Her voice was barely a whisper. "No, Your Honor. I couldn't afford Mr. Thorne's fees." Marcus covered a laugh with a cough. He leaned back, whispering to Thorne, "Look at her. Pathetic. She's going to cry in a minute." Thorne smirked, not looking up from his notes. "Let her. It plays better for us." The humiliation had been calculated. For the last 6 months, Marcus had systematically cut off her access to their joint accounts. He had cancelled her credit cards while she was at the grocery store. He had spread rumors among their social circle, the circle he had introduced her to, that she was drinking again, that she was having a breakdown. He had isolated her completely. "Mrs. Vance," Judge Harrington said, his voice losing patience, "this is the final hearing. If you cannot prove financial solvency, I have no choice but to award full custody of your son, Leo, to Mr. Vance, along with the marital home. You will be granted supervised visitation every other weekend." Supervised, like she was a criminal. "Please, Your Honor," Olivia said, her voice trembling but clear. "Marcus, Mr. Vance, he cleared out the savings. He blocked me from the accounts. I helped build his career. I supported him when he was a junior analyst. I just need time." Marcus stood up, buttoning his jacket. He didn't ask permission to speak. He just took the floor. "Your Honor, with all due respect, my wife is delusional. She claims she helped me. She was a waitress when I met her. I pulled her out of a diner in Queens and gave her a penthouse in Tribeca. I tried to give her the world. But she's ungrateful, and frankly, she's a drain on my resources." He turned to look directly at Olivia. His eyes were cold, dead sharks swimming in blue water. "Face it, Olivia," he said, loud enough for the back row to hear. "You're a charity case. You always were. You're lucky I kept you around this long. But I'm done paying for a dead weight." The courtroom went silent. Even the stenographer paused. It was a brutal, public evisceration. Olivia looked down at the table. A tear finally escaped, tracking through the cheap foundation she was wearing. Marcus felt a surge of triumph. This was it, the kill shot. "If there are no further objections," Judge Harrington began, lifting his gavel, "I am prepared to rule." "Wait," Olivia said. It wasn't a beg. It was a command. Marcus blinked. He hadn't heard that tone in her voice in years, not since the beginning. "I have one witness," Olivia said. She looked up, and for the first time that day, her eyes weren't wet. They were burning. "He's running a little late. Traffic from the airport," Marcus laughed out loud. "A witness? Who, Olivia? Your manager from the diner? Some drifter you met on the subway? This is a court of law, not a reality TV show. You're wasting the judge's time." "Mr. Thorne," the judge said, looking annoyed, "does the defense have a witness list?" "She submitted nothing, Your Honor," Thorne said, standing up. "This is a stall tactic, a desperate last grasp." "It is not a stall tactic," Olivia said, her voice gaining strength. She reached into her worn tote bag and pulled out a cell phone. It wasn't the cracked iPhone Marcus knew she had. It was a burner phone, but she wasn't dialing. She was just holding it. "He said he's in the elevator." "Who is in the elevator?" Marcus mocked, leaning over the railing. "Your new boyfriend? Did you find a bus driver to take pity on you?" Olivia looked at Marcus. A strange, terrifying calmness settled over her face. "No, Marcus. My father." Marcus froze for a second, then burst into laughter. The sound echoed off the high ceilings. "Your father? You told me your father was a deadbeat mechanic who left when you were 6. What's he going to do? Fix my car in exchange for alimony?" He turned to the gallery, grinning, seeking validation for his joke. But the laughter died in his throat, because the heavy oak doors at the back of the courtroom didn't just open. They were pushed open by 2 men in dark suits with earpieces. Security. The atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. The air pressure seemed to drop. Through the doors walked a man. He was in his 60s, with silver hair swept back and a face carved from granite. He wore a navy blue 3-piece suit that cost more than Marcus's car. He walked with a cane, not out of weakness, but as if the cane was a weapon he was choosing not to use yet. The silence was absolute. The man walked down the center aisle, his dress shoes clicking rhythmically on the floor. He didn't look at the judge. He didn't look at the lawyers. He looked only at Marcus. Marcus felt a bead of sweat roll down his back. He knew that face. He had seen that face on the cover of Forbes. He had seen that face on CNBC every morning while he drank his espresso. "No," Marcus whispered, the blood draining from his face. "That's impossible." The man stopped at the gate separating the gallery from the court floor. He looked at the bailiff, who instinctively stepped aside. The man turned his gaze to Olivia. His hard expression softened for a fraction of a second. "I'm sorry I'm late, sweetheart. The jet had a localized landing issue at Teterboro." He turned to the judge. "Alexander Sterling," the man announced, his voice a low baritone that vibrated in the chest. "CEO of Sterling Global, and—" He turned his cold eyes back to Marcus, Olivia's father. The name Sterling hung in the air like smoke after an explosion. Judge Harrington, who had been ready to dismiss Olivia's plea a minute ago, sat up straight. He adjusted his glasses, his demeanor shifting from annoyance to terrified respect. Everyone in the New York legal system knew who Alexander Sterling was. He wasn't just rich, he was powerful. He owned shipping lines, pharmaceutical patents, and half the commercial real estate in Lower Manhattan. Marcus felt his knees go weak. He gripped the edge of the table. "This is a joke," Marcus stammered, his voice cracking. "This is some kind of actor. Olivia hired an actor." Alexander Sterling didn't even acknowledge Marcus spoke. He opened the small gate and walked to the defendant's table, standing next to his daughter. He placed a hand on her shoulder. "Mr. Thorne," Judge Harrington said, his voice surprisingly polite. "Were you aware of Mrs. Vance's parentage?" Julian Thorne was pale. He was flipping through his files frantically. "No, Your Honor. This was never disclosed during discovery. We object to this surprise witness." "I am not a witness yet," Alexander said coolly. "I am simply an observer. However, I have brought my own counsel." From the back of the room, 3 more people entered. They didn't look like court-appointed lawyers. They looked like predators. The woman in the lead was recognizable instantly to Thorne. It was Rebecca Steele, the managing partner of Steele & Associates, the most feared litigator in the state. Thorne dropped his pen. He was a shark, yes. But Rebecca Steele was the orca that ate sharks for fun. "Your Honor," Rebecca Steele said, walking forward, her heels clicking sharp and fast. "We are filing an immediate motion to intervene. We are also filing a motion to dismiss the financial affidavit submitted by Mr. Vance on the grounds of perjury, fraud, and embezzlement." "Embezzlement?" Marcus shrieked. "You can't just walk in here and accuse me of crimes. I am the CFO of Optima Tech." Alexander Sterling finally turned to look at his son-in-law. The look was one of pure, unfiltered disgust. "Optima Tech," Alexander said, tasting the words like they were sour milk. "A mid-sized logistics software company. Tell me, Marcus, Who do you think owns the holding company that acquired Optima Tech 3 years ago? Marcus blinked. It was a private equity firm, the Orion Group. And who do you think owns Orion Group? Alexander asked softly. Marcus stared. The dots weren't connecting. His brain refused to accept the reality. I do, Alexander said. I bought your company 3 years ago, Marcus. Specifically, so I could keep an eye on the man who married my daughter against my wishes. The courtroom gasped. You own my company, Marcus whispered. I own the building you work in, Alexander continued, stepping closer. I own the servers your data is stored on, and I own the forensic accounting firm that has been auditing your books for the last 48 hours. Olivia finally spoke. She stood up, shedding the look of the victim. She looked at Marcus, and for the first time, he saw the resemblance. She had her father's jawline. I told you, Marcus, Olivia said quietly. I told you that money didn't matter to me. I told you I wanted a simple life. I left my father's world because I wanted to be loved for me, not for the sterling name. I thought you were different. I thought you were a hard worker who loved me. I do love you, Marcus shouted, panic setting in. He looked around the courtroom, realizing his allies were gone. Thorne was distancing himself physically, inching his chair away. You loved the idea of controlling me, Olivia corrected. You loved making me feel small so you could feel big. You mocked me for clipping coupons. You mocked me for wanting to save money. You called me a peasant. She took a step toward him. You didn't know that every time you called me worthless, I was signing off on your quarterly bonuses under a pseudonym. You didn't know that the investor who saved your job last year was me. Marcus felt the room spinning. He had treated the heiress of Sterling Global like a servant. He had cheated on her, gaslighted her, and tried to leave her destitute. Your Honor, Rebecca Steele interrupted. We have evidence that Mr. Vance has been funneling company funds that ultimately belong to the Sterling Family Trust, into an offshore account in the Caymans, an account listed under the name of, she checked her notes, a Miss Jessica Miller. The color drained from Marcus's face completely. Jessica, his mistress. That's a lie, Marcus screamed. That's privileged information. It's not privileged when it's theft, Mr. Vance, Judge Harrington snapped. He looked at the documents Rebecca Steele had just placed on his bench. His eyebrows shot up. These are substantial amounts. $2 million, Alexander Sterling said. Stolen from the company I own to pay for the apartment of the woman you are sleeping with, while you try to take my grandson away from his mother because she can't afford him. Alexander leaned in, his voice dropping to a terrifying growl. You wanted a fight, Marcus. You wanted to crush the little people. Well, congratulations. You finally picked a fight with someone your own size. I want a recess, Marcus yelled, looking at Thorne. Do something. Thorne stood up, closing his briefcase. Your Honor, I would like to request a recess to confer with my client regarding these new criminal allegations, and I would also like to formally state that I was unaware of any embezzlement. Sit down, Mr. Thorne, the judge ordered. Nobody is going anywhere. Bailiffs, secure the doors. Marcus looked at the exit. The two large men who had entered with Alexander were standing there, arms crossed. Olivia looked at her father. Daddy, I didn't want it to be like this. Alexander took her hand. I know, Elle. You wanted to prove you could make it on your own. And you did. You survived him. But you don't fight a plague with kindness, sweetheart. You fight it with fire. Alexander turned to the judge. Your Honor, before you rule on custody, there is one more thing you should know. The prenuptial agreement that Marcus forced Olivia to sign? The one that gives him everything? Marcus's head snapped up. That prenup was his safety net. It was ironclad. What about it? Marcus spat. It's valid. She signed it. She did. Alexander smiled, a shark-like grin. But she signed it as Olivia Vance. However, at the time of signing, legally, her name was still Olivia Sterling, and under the bylaws of the Sterling Family Trust, which she is a beneficiary of, any contract involving her assets must be countersigned by the primary trustee. Alexander tapped his cane on the floor. Me. I never signed it, Alexander said, which means, Marcus, that prenup isn't worth the paper it's printed on, which means my daughter is entitled to 50% of everything you have, including the money you stole. Marcus slumped into his chair. The silence in the courtroom was deafening. He had mocked his wife's last chance. Now he was looking at his own end. But the nightmare was only just beginning, because the doors opened again. And this time, it wasn't a lawyer. It was the police. The two officers who entered weren't beat cops. They wore the gold shields of the major case squad. Leading them was Detective Thomas Bronson, a man who looked like he had seen every variety of white-collar scumbag New York had to offer, and was impressed by none of them. Marcus Vance? Bronson asked, though it wasn't really a question. He held up a warrant. You are under arrest for wire fraud, grand larceny, and corporate embezzlement. Marcus stood frozen. His brain was misfiring, trying to reconcile the reality of his morning, coffee, suit, golf plans, with the reality of this moment. This is insane, Marcus spat, backing away until his legs hit the defendant's chair. You can't arrest me here. This is a civil proceeding. Judge, tell them. Judge Harrington looked down from the bench, slowly closing the folder in front of him. Mr. Vance, criminal warrants supersede civil hearings. If you have committed crimes within my jurisdiction, the court officers will assist the detectives. I haven't committed any crimes, Marcus screamed, his voice cracking into a high-pitched whine. He pointed a shaking finger at Alexander Sterling. This is him. He's doing this. He's framing me because he doesn't like me. Alexander didn't move. He stood next to Olivia like a statue, his hands resting on the head of his cane. He looked at Marcus with a mixture of pity and boredom. Mr. Vance, Detective Bronson said, stepping through the gate. He pulled a pair of handcuffs from his belt. The metal clicked ominously. We have the bank records. We have the IP logs from your private server. And we have the testimony of your associate, Ms. Jessica Miller. Marcus stopped breathing. Jessica? She was picked up an hour ago at JFK, Bronson said, spinning Marcus around and roughly pulling his arms behind his back. She was trying to board a flight to Nice with a suitcase full of bearer bonds. She was very eager to cut a deal. The courtroom watched in stunned silence as the cold steel ratcheted shut around Marcus's wrists. The man who had walked in acting like a king was now hunched over, his expensive suit jacket bunching up awkwardly. Julian, Marcus yelled at his lawyer. Do something, stop them. Julian Thorne was already packing his briefcase. He didn't look at Marcus. He looked at Rebecca Steele, Alexander's lawyer. I will be withdrawing as counsel, effective immediately. I cannot represent a client who funds his defense with stolen capital. You coward! Marcus screamed as the detectives shoved him toward the aisle. I paid you! With my money, Alexander corrected calmly. As Marcus was frog-marched down the center aisle, he passed Olivia. He stopped, digging his heels in, forcing the detectives to pause. He looked at her, his eyes wild, searching for the weak woman he had bullied for years. He was looking for the Olivia who apologized when he spilled his drink. Olivia, he gasped. Olivia, tell them to stop. Think about Leo. You don't want his father in prison. Please, I can fix this. We can talk. Olivia looked at him. For the first time in their marriage, she looked down on him. Not physically, but spiritually. "I am thinking about Leo," Olivia said, her voice steady and cold. "That's why I'm letting them take you. I don't want my son raised by a thief who thinks he can buy people." "I made you," Marcus hissed, his true face showing one last time. "You were nothing. I was happy," Olivia said, "and now I will be again." Detective Bronson shoved Marcus forward. "Let's go, tough guy." As the double doors swung open to the hallway, the flashing of cameras erupted. Alexander Sterling hadn't just brought lawyers, he had tipped off the press. The hallway was lined with reporters from the Post, the Times, and every local news station. "Mr. Vance, is it true you embezzled millions from your wife's family?" "Mr. Vance, smile for the camera." Marcus lowered his head, trying to hide. But it was too late. The image of the arrogant CFO in handcuffs was already beaming to satellites. Back inside the courtroom, the silence returned. Judge Harrington cleared his throat. He looked at Olivia with a newfound, terrified respect. "Mrs. Vance, or should I say, Mrs. Sterling," the judge stammered, "regarding the custody petition, given the change in circumstances and the defendant's incarceration." "I would like full sole custody," Olivia said, "with no visitation rights until a psychological evaluation is completed." "Granted," the judge said instantly. The gavel came down. "Immediate effect. Court is adjourned." Olivia let out a breath she felt like she had been holding for 5 years. She felt her father's hand squeeze her shoulder. "It's over, Elle," Alexander whispered. "Not yet," Olivia said, wiping her eyes. "I need to go see him. One last time." "Why?" Alexander asked, his brow furrowing. "Let the lawyers handle him." "Because," Olivia said, picking up her worn tote bag, "he needs to know the whole truth. He needs to know exactly who he tried to destroy." The interrogation room at the 19th Precinct was a stark contrast to the mahogany luxury of Marcus's office. It was cold, smelling of bleach and old sweat. The mirror on the wall was one way, and Marcus knew it. He had been sitting there for 3 hours. No phone call, no water, just his thoughts, and the terrifying realization that his life had imploded in the span of a morning. The door buzzed and opened. Marcus looked up, expecting a lawyer. Instead, Olivia walked in. She had changed. She wasn't wearing the grey cardigan anymore. She was wearing a structured black blazer, her hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail. She looked like the Sterling she was. She sat down opposite him. She didn't look afraid. "You have 5 minutes," the guard said from the door, then closed it. "You came to gloat?" Marcus sneered, though his voice lacked its usual bite. He looked small in the metal chair. "Or did you come to bail me out? If you get me out, Olivia, I can explain. The money, it was an investment. Jessica, she seduced me. It was a mistake." Olivia laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. "Stop lying, Marcus. It's boring." She placed her hands on the table. "Jessica didn't seduce you. You preyed on her just like you preyed on me. You look for women you think are weak, women you can dazzle with money and status. I gave you a life." Marcus slammed his hand on the table, the handcuffs clattering. "You were a waitress. I took you to Paris. I bought you diamonds." "You bought me diamonds with my father's money," Olivia corrected. "Do you want to know the truth, Marcus? Do you want to know why I never told you who I was?" Marcus stared at her, his jaw working. "Because you were ashamed. You knew you didn't measure up to your father, so you ran away and played poor girl." "No," Olivia said softly. "I ran away because, in my world, everyone wears a mask. Everyone wants something. I wanted to find someone who loved Olivia, not the sterling heiress. I wanted to find a man who would build a life with me from the ground up. She leaned in close. When I met you at the diner, I thought you were that man. You were ambitious. You were funny. You didn't care that I had holes in my sneakers. I fell in love with you, Marcus. I was ready to give you the world. I was going to tell you the truth on our first anniversary. Marcus looked stunned. You were going to tell me? Yes, Olivia said. I had the papers drawn up. I was going to bring you into the family business. You wouldn't have had to steal. You would have been the CEO of a Fortune 500 company by now. My father was ready to hand you the keys to the kingdom simply because I loved you. Marcus felt a physical blow to his gut. The irony was suffocating. He had stolen millions and risked prison for peanuts, when he could have had billions legitimately if he had just been a decent human being. But then, Olivia continued, her eyes hardening, you changed. As soon as you got that first promotion at Optima, you started treating me like an accessory. You started making jokes about my poverty to your friends. You started hiding your phone. You started making me feel small so you could feel big. I was stressed, Marcus pleaded. The job my father gave you, Olivia snapped. Do you remember the night you told me I was too stupid to understand your finances? That was the night I called my father. That was the night the trap was set. Marcus's eyes widened. You knew? For how long? 2 years, Olivia said. I knew about Jessica from the first week. I knew about the offshore accounts. I knew about the second apartment. Why didn't you leave? Marcus whispered. Because of Leo, Olivia said, her voice softening slightly. I didn't want to destroy his father unless I had to. I gave you every chance to be a good man, Marcus, even today, in court. If you had just shown 1 ounce of mercy, if you had agreed to joint custody, if you hadn't tried to humiliate me, I might have let you walk away with a quiet divorce. I might have let you keep your reputation. She stood up, but you had to mock me. You had to try to crush me. And in doing so, you pressed the button that detonated your own life. The door buzzed. Time's up, the guard said. Olivia turned to leave. Olivia! Marcus cried out, panic seizing him. What happens to me? What about the trial? Olivia paused at the door. She didn't look back. Daddy hired the best prosecutors in the state to consult on the case against you. Jessica has already handed over the ledger where you detailed every illegal transaction. You're looking at 15 to 20 years, Marcus. 15 years, Marcus sobbed. I can't do prison. Olivia, please. You should have thought about that before you called your wife a charity case, she said. She walked out. The heavy metal door slammed shut, sealing Marcus in a silence that was absolute. Outside the precinct, Alexander was waiting by the Maybach. He held the door open for her. Did you get what you needed? He asked gently. Olivia took a deep breath of the cool city air. For the first time in years, the air didn't feel heavy. It felt like possibility. Yes, she said. I'm done with the past. Good, Alexander said, gesturing to the car. Because we have a meeting. The board of Optima Tech is convening in an hour. Why am I needed there? Olivia asked, confused. Alexander smiled, a genuine, warm smile. Because, my dear, the position of CFO is currently vacant, and as the majority shareholder, I believe it's time the company was run by someone who actually knows the value of a dollar. Someone who worked her way up from a diner. Olivia looked at her father, then at the skyline of New York. She realized she wasn't just a survivor anymore. She was a sterling. I'll need a new suit, she said. Alexander laughed. I think we can afford it. As the car pulled away, leaving the precinct behind, Olivia's phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. She opened it. It was a photo. A grainy picture taken from across the street of the precinct. It showed Olivia getting into the Maybach. The text below read, "He might be in jail, but you still owe us. The debt doesn't disappear with the husband." Olivia frowned. "Everything okay?" Alexander asked. Olivia quickly locked her phone. "Yes, just spam." But her heart hammered against her ribs. Marcus hadn't just been stealing money for a mistress. He had been stealing money to pay someone else, someone dangerous. The war wasn't over. It had just changed battlefields. The boardroom of Optima Tech was situated on the 40th floor, offering a panoramic view of the Hudson River. It was a view Marcus had often posted on Instagram with captions like, "Grind set" and "Oars Empire Building." Now, Olivia sat at the head of the table, the leather chair feeling cold and unfamiliar. Around the table sat 12 board members, men and women who had laughed at Marcus's jokes about his peasant wife at company galas. Now they wouldn't meet her eyes. "Let's get one thing clear," Olivia said, her voice cutting through the silence. She didn't shout. She used the same tone she used to use when cutting off a drunk patron at the diner. It was a tone that brokered no argument. "I am not here because my last name is Sterling. I am here because the previous CFO treated this company like his personal piggy bank, and frankly, looking at the quarterly reports, most of you let him do it." A balding man, the VP of operations named Greg, cleared his throat. Ms. Sterling, we were unaware of Marcus's illicit activities. He was very compartmentalized." "He was sloppy, Greg," Olivia countered, tossing a file onto the mahogany table. "He expensed a $50,000 consulting trip to Bora Bora. You signed the approval. Were you compartmentalized, or were you just lazy?" Greg turned a shade of crimson that matched his tie. "We are freezing all executive bonuses," Olivia announced. "We are conducting a forensic audit of every department. If you are clean, you have nothing to worry about. If you're not..." She looked at the door where 2 of her father's security team stood. "The exit is that way, and the police station is 3 blocks down." The meeting ended in a flurry of nervous shuffling. As the room cleared, Alexander walked in. He looked proud, but his eyes were shadowed with worry. "You handled them well," he said, pouring a glass of water. "You have your mother's steel." "I felt like I was going to throw up," Olivia admitted, her facade cracking for a moment. She slumped slightly in the chair. "Dad." The text message. The one I got outside the precinct. "We're tracing it," Alexander said, his voice dropping. "My security team is scrubbing the metadata." "But Olivia, Marcus was desperate." "Desperate men borrow from dangerous people. I've doubled the detail on Leo's school. No one gets near my grandson." "I found something else," Olivia said. She opened her laptop and spun it around to face her father. "I was looking through Marcus's hidden drive, the one the police haven't cracked yet. I guessed the password. It was Billionaire." She shook her head at the pathetic vanity of it. "Look at this spreadsheet. It's titled The Vane Account." Alexander put on his reading glasses. He scrolled down the list of transactions. His frown deepened. "These aren't withdrawals, Olivia. These are deposits, massive ones. 500,000, 200,000. Cash deposits into shell companies." "Marcus wasn't just stealing from Optima to spend it," Olivia whispered. "He was washing money. He was using the company's logistics network to move..." "Something else." Alexander looked up, his face pale. "This isn't embezzlement, Olivia. This is money laundering. Marcus was cleaning cash for a crime syndicate." Just then, the receptionist buzzed the intercom. Her voice was trembling. "Ms. Sterling, there's a courier here. He says he has a package for you. He says it's personal." "Don't let him in," Alexander ordered sharply. "He left it at the desk and walked out," the receptionist squeaked. Olivia and Alexander exchanged a look. Alexander signaled his head of security, a massive former Navy SEAL named Kane. "Check the package." 5 minutes later, Kane entered the boardroom holding a large manila envelope. "It's been scanned. No explosives. No chemical agents. Just photos." Olivia took the envelope. Her hands shook as she opened it. The first photo was of Marcus in the prison yard at Rikers Island. He was on the ground, his face a bloody ruin, his arm bent at an unnatural angle. He had been beaten within an inch of his life. The second photo made Olivia's blood turn to ice. It was a picture of Leo, taken today. He was on the playground at his private school. In the background of the photo, circled in red marker, was a man standing by the fence. He was holding a stopwatch. On the back of the photo, written in elegant cursive script, was a message. "The interest is accruing, Mrs. Vance. Your husband lost our inventory. You have 48 hours to replace the $5 million value, or we collect the collateral. The boy looks fast, but no one outruns a bullet." Olivia dropped the photo. "They're watching Leo." Alexander slammed his cane onto the floor, the sound like a gunshot. "Pull him out of school, now! Kane, get the team. We are going to war." "No," Olivia said. She stood up, the fear in her chest hardening into something cold and sharp. "If we pull him out, they'll just wait. They'll hunt us forever." Marcus lost their inventory. He lost their product. "We go to the FBI," Alexander said. "The FBI will put us in protective custody," Olivia argued. "We'll live in a motel in Idaho for the rest of our lives. I am not running, Dad. I ran from my identity for 10 years. I'm not running anymore." She picked up the photo of the beaten Marcus. "I'm going to pay them," she said. "Absolutely not," Alexander roared. "We do not negotiate with terrorists." "I'm not negotiating," Olivia said, her eyes flashing. "I'm buying a meeting." The meeting was set for midnight at a shipping yard in the Brooklyn Navy Yard. It was cliché, ominous, and exactly where people who operated in the shadows felt comfortable. Alexander had forbidden it, but Olivia had overruled him. "It's my son, Dad, and it's my mess." However, she wasn't going alone. Alexander's security team was positioned in the shadows of the shipping containers, armed with long-range rifles. A drone hovered silently 200 feet above, recording everything. Olivia stood under a flickering halogen light, clutching a heavy briefcase. The wind off the East River whipped her hair across her face. She wore a trench coat, but underneath, she was wired with a microphone, broadcasting directly to the NYPD Major Case Squad, whom Alexander had called in as a backup contingency. At 12:01 a.m., a black SUV rolled out of the darkness. The headlights blinded her for a moment. 2 men stepped out. They were heavy muscle, dressed in leather jackets. Then, the rear door opened. The man who stepped out didn't look like a thug. He looked like a banker. He wore a camel hair coat and a pristine scarf. He was handsome in a reptilian sort of way. This was Gavin Cross. The NYPD knew the name. A high-level fixer for the Eastern European syndicates. A man who didn't exist on paper. Cross smiled, showing teeth that were too white. "Mrs. Vance, or is it Ms. Sterling now? It's hard to keep up with the tabloids." "It's Sterling," Olivia said, her voice steady. "And I have your money." She threw the briefcase onto the wet pavement. It skidded to a halt at Cross's feet. One of the henchmen opened it. It was filled with stacks of $100 bills. $5 million. "Count it," Olivia said. "It's all there." Cross chuckled. He didn't look at the money. He looked at Olivia. You misunderstand, Olivia. Can I call you Olivia? The 5 million was the principal. But Marcus, poor stupid Marcus, he caused us a lot of inconvenience. He was supposed to use your logistics trucks to move a shipment of high-grade microchips, stolen, of course, to Canada. He got arrested before the trucks could move. The police seized the trucks. We lost the chips. Cross took a step closer. The chips were worth 20 million. The 5 million is just a down payment. I don't have 20 million in cash, Olivia lied. No, Cross purred. But your father does, and you have access to the sterling global shipping routes. Here is the new deal. You are the CEO of Optima now. You will use your company to replace our transport network. You will move our product. If you do that, the debt is forgiven. If you don't, he pulled a phone from his pocket and showed her a live video feed. It was a camera pointed at the window of her father's penthouse. We can touch you anywhere, Cross whispered. We have people inside your building, inside your security team. Olivia felt a chill go down her spine. Inside the security team? If I agree, Olivia said, stalling, how do I know you won't just ask for more? You don't, Cross smiled. That's the beauty of partnership. Olivia looked at the briefcase, then back at Cross. She needed him to confess. She needed it on the wire. So you admit it, she said clearly. You were using Marcus to traffic stolen technology, and now you are extorting me to do the same. Cross's smile faded. He looked around. You're asking very specific questions, Olivia. Almost like you're wearing a wire. The air in the shipping yard shifted. The 2 henchmen reached into their jackets. Checker, Cross ordered. Police! A voice boomed over a loudspeaker. Drop your weapons. It wasn't the NYPD. It was Kane, her father's head of security, shouting from the top of a shipping container. Chaos erupted. The henchmen drew guns, but red laser dots appeared instantly on their chests. Snipers! Don't move! Kane shouted. Cross looked at the snipers, then at Olivia. He didn't look scared. He looked disappointed. You brought a cavalry, Cross sighed. Very dramatic. But you made a mistake, Olivia. He tapped his phone. I told you, we have people inside. Suddenly, the drone overhead spiraled out of control and crashed into the river. The lights in the shipping yard cut out, plunging them into total darkness. Olivia heard a scuffle, a grunt of pain, and then a hand clamped over her mouth. The boss wants you, a voice hissed in her ear. It wasn't Cross. It was one of the men standing behind her, one of her own security guards. Betrayal. Olivia bit down hard on the hand, tasting blood. The man screamed. She stomped on his instep with her heel and broke free, sprinting into the darkness of the container maze. Get her! Cross shouted, his composure gone. Forget the money. Get the girl. She's the ticket. Olivia ran, her heart pounding against her ribs like a trapped bird. She could hear footsteps splashing in the puddles behind her. She turned a corner and pressed herself against the cold metal of a rusty container. She fumbled for her phone, but it was gone. Dropped in the struggle. She was alone in the dark with 3 killers and a traitor, and her father's sniper team was blind. She heard breathing. Close. Olivia! Cross's voice echoed through the metal canyons. There's nowhere to go. Come out and we'll just talk about the 20 million. Keep running, and I send the order to visit Leo. Olivia looked around. She was cornered. To her right was the river, black and churning. To her left, the approaching men. She saw a rusted iron ladder leading up the side of a container stack. It was her only chance. She began to climb, the cold metal biting into her hands. She was halfway up when a hand grabbed her ankle. Gotcha! The traitorous guard sneered. Olivia looked down. She kicked out, her heel connecting with his face. but he didn't let go. He pulled, and her grip slipped. She fell. But she didn't hit the ground. A figure emerged from the shadows, tackling the guard mid-air. There was the sickening crunch of bone, and the guard went limp. Olivia landed hard on her side, gasping for air. She looked up at her savior. It was a man in a tattered grey hoodie, holding a metal pipe. He turned to face her, his face illuminated by a sudden flash of lightning. It was Marcus, but not the Marcus she knew. He was bruised, his eye swollen shut, wearing dirty civilian clothes. He had escaped, or he had been let out. "Run!" Marcus rasped, blood dripping from his mouth. "Go, Olivia, I bought you time." "Marcus," she whispered, shocked. "How? I made a deal!" Marcus screamed, swinging the pipe as Cross's other men came around the corner. "I told them I'd get you for them if they let me out, but I lied. Go!" Marcus Vance, the man who had mocked her, the man who had stolen from her, charged at the gunman with nothing but a pipe and a death wish. Gunshots rang out. Marcus fell. Olivia screamed, but hands grabbed her from the darkness. It was Kane. "We have to move, Mum. Now!" Kane dragged her toward the waiting armored car as the firefight erupted behind them. Olivia looked back one last time. She saw Marcus lying on the wet pavement, reaching out toward her as Gavin Cross stood over him, gun raised. The armored car door slammed shut. "Drive!" Kane yelled. As they sped away, Olivia sat in the dark, shaking uncontrollably. Marcus had set her up again. He had led Cross to her. But at the last second, he had turned. Why? And then she saw it. Clutched in her hand, which she had scraped when she fell, was a piece of paper Marcus had shoved into her palm when he tackled the guard. She unfolded it. It was covered in blood. It was a bank account number and a note. "The evidence is here. It brings down the whole network. I'm sorry. Tell Leo I tried." Olivia stared at the note. Marcus was gone, but he had just given her the weapon she needed to destroy Gavin Cross and everyone he worked for. The real war had just begun. The safe house was a fortress of glass and steel perched on the cliffs of the Palisades, miles away from the smoke and blood of the Brooklyn Navy Yard. But for Olivia, the distance didn't matter. She could still smell the gunpowder. She could still see Marcus falling. She sat in the command center Alexander had installed in the basement, wrapped in a blanket, staring at the bloody piece of paper. "He's gone, Olivia," Alexander said softly, placing a hand on her shoulder. Kane had just confirmed it via a police scanner. Marcus Vance had been pronounced dead on arrival at Bellevue Hospital. Multiple gunshot wounds. Olivia didn't cry. The tears would come later. Right now, there was only a cold, burning need to finish what he had started. "He gave me this," Olivia said, smoothing out the crumpled note. "He said it brings down the network." She typed the account number into the terminal. It wasn't a bank account. It was an IP address, a direct link to a private server. "It's encrypted," Kane said, looking at the wall of scrolling code. "Military grade. It could take weeks to brute force this." "We don't have weeks," Olivia said. "Cross knows I have it. He'll be liquidating assets, burning files, and disappearing. If he leaves the country, we never catch him." She looked at the password prompt. Hint. Where we started. "The diner," Olivia whispered. She typed in Queen's Diner. Access denied. She frowned. "The park. Access denied." She closed her eyes, trying to think like Marcus, not the monster he had become, but the man he was when he wrote this code, the man who had just died to save her. "Where we started," she murmured. "Not me and him. Him and his ambition." She typed. "The courtroom." The screen flashed green. Access granted. Files began to populate the screen, thousands of them. It wasn't just a ledger, it was a recording. Marcus had bugged his own office. There were audio files of Gavin Cross threatening him. There were video files of Cross meeting with corrupt Port Authority officials. There were wire transfer logs linking the Orion Group to human trafficking rings in Eastern Europe. "My God," Alexander whispered, reading the headers. "This connects Cross to half the organized crime on the East Coast." Marcus was building an insurance policy. He was trapped, Olivia realized. He started stealing because he was greedy. But then they owned him. He was gathering evidence to try and buy his way out. "We need to send this to the FBI immediately," Alexander said, reaching for the secure line. "No," Olivia stopped him. "Cross has people in the bureau. He bragged about it. If we send this digitally, it might get deleted before it reaches the director." "So what do we do?" Kane asked. "We can't just sit on it." Olivia stood up. The trembling had stopped. In its place was a terrifying resolve. She looked at the time. 8 a.m. "Today is the Optima Tech annual shareholder meeting," Olivia said. "It's being held at the Javits Center. It's live-streamed to global markets." "Olivia, no," Alexander warned. "It's too dangerous. Cross will be watching." "I know," Olivia said, turning to her father. "I'm counting on it. I want him to come for me, because this time I won't be running." She turned to Kane. "Get the car and call the press. Tell them the new CEO of Optima Tech has an announcement that will change the industry forever." The Javits Center was packed. The news of Marcus Vance's death, reported as a failed carjacking, had only fueled the media frenzy. The world wanted to see the grieving widow, the secret heiress, the woman who had survived a scandal and a tragedy in 48 hours. Olivia walked onto the stage. She wore white, a stark contrast to the black mourning clothes everyone expected. She looked like an avenging angel. The cameras flashed, a blinding stroboscope of attention. "Ladies and gentlemen," Olivia began, her voice amplified across the massive hall. "You came here to hear about quarterly earnings. You came to hear about the future of logistics." She looked directly into the center camera. "But today, we are going to talk about the cost of business." In the back of the room, standing near the exit, Gavin Cross watched. He was disguised as a security contractor, wearing a hat and sunglasses. He tapped his earpiece. "Target is on stage," he whispered. "Take the shot when she steps away from the podium. Make it look like a crazed fan." Up in the catwalks, a man adjusted his rifle scope. Olivia continued. "My husband, Marcus Vance, died yesterday. The news says it was a random act of violence. That is a lie." A murmur rippled through the crowd. "Marcus was murdered," Olivia declared, "by a criminal organization that has been using this company, my company, to smuggle illegal goods across borders." Cross stiffened. "She's going off script. She's suicidal. Take the shot," he hissed. "They think they are untouchable," Olivia said, her voice rising. "They think they own the police. They think they own the silence." She pressed a button on the podium. The massive screen behind her, usually reserved for stock graphs, turned black. Then, a video played. It was Gavin Cross, clear as day, sitting in Marcus's office, holding a gun to Marcus's head. The audio boomed through the speakers. "I don't care about your wife, Marcus. If the shipment doesn't move, I will kill her, and I will sell your son." The crowd gasped. Screams erupted. In the back, Cross froze. His face was on a 50-foot screen. "That man," Olivia pointed to the screen, "is Gavin Cross, and he is in this building right now." Suddenly, the house lights flooded the auditorium. "Now!" Olivia shouted. From the side curtains, it wasn't security guards who rushed out. It was a SWAT team, but not just any SWAT team. Alexander Sterling had called in a favor from the governor. This was the state police, a jurisdiction Cross hadn't compromised. "Drop the weapon." A spotlight swung to the catwalks, blinding the sniper. He dropped his rifle, raising his hands. Another spotlight swept the back of the room, landing on Gavin Cross. He turned to run, but the doors were blocked. Kane was there, standing with his arms crossed, a cruel smile on his face. "Going somewhere?" Kane asked. Cross reached for his weapon, but he was tackled by 3 officers. As they dragged him away, handcuffed and screaming, he locked eyes with Olivia. She didn't look away. She didn't flinch. She watched him being dragged out of her life, extinguishing the threat to her son forever. The auditorium was in chaos, but Olivia stood still at the podium. She looked at the front row, where her father sat, holding Leo's hand. Leo looked scared, but safe. Olivia leaned into the microphone one last time. "Optima Tech is under new management," she said, "and we are closed for cleaning." The cemetery was quiet. The autumn leaves were turning gold and red, falling softly onto the black granite headstone. Marcus Vance's father. Husband. Olivia stood there, holding Leo's hand. "Did Daddy really save us?" Leo asked, looking up with wide, innocent eyes. Olivia looked at the grave. She thought about the cruelty, the mockery, the theft. She thought about the man who had called her a peasant in court. But then she thought about the man in the hoodie, beaten and broken, swinging a pipe at gunmen to give her time to climb a ladder. She thought about the bloody note that had saved their future. Marcus was a villain. But in his final seconds, he had chosen to be a father. "Yes, Leo," Olivia said, squeezing his hand. "He made a lot of mistakes. But in the end, he saved us." She placed a single white rose on the stone. "Come on," she said, turning away from the grave. "Grandpa is waiting. We have a company to run." They walked away, leaving the shadow of the past behind them. A black Maybach waited at the gate. Olivia helped her son inside, then paused to look back at the city skyline. She had entered that city as a waitress. She had survived it as a victim. Now, she owned it as a queen. The engine purred, and they drove off into the light. And that is the story of how one man's arrogance became his undoing, and how a woman's silence hid a power he never expected. Olivia proved that true strength isn't about how loud you shout in a courtroom, but about what you're willing to do to protect the people you love. Marcus learned too late that when you back someone into a corner, you'd better be sure they don't have a billionaire father and a backbone of steel waiting in the shadows. If you enjoyed this story of betrayal, redemption, and justice, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow and lets me know you want more stories like this. Share this video with a friend who loves a good drama, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a twist. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.